All right, everyone. Well, let's get this party started when it comes to hitting our 1,000 subscriber mark. Now, these texts are not easy to get. In fact, since they are so rare, some were grossly overpriced. Others came from countries outside of the United States, and 2 of my online merchant experiences attempting to partially create this collection were negative, associated with one merchant sending me the right text title but wrong author, and the other just mysteriously canceled my order. Needless to say, this was a costly endeavor, producing this brief series of videos. And this channel is not yet fully monetized at the time of making this video, just falling short of the watch hours required to initiate ad revenue, meaning to anyone that chooses to provide a super thanks or that heart and $ icon that can be found in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen will make future content such as this easier to produce. Either way, any effort, such as watching my long videos in their entirety, or through simply liking the videos that you see, or of course being a subscriber, helps the growth of this channel. For today's video, I have selected 4 of Dr. William Sadler's published works to review and examine. More texts are on the way, but I'll try to keep these videos short, focusing on just being over 20 minutes if I can. So we're going to have to break this endeavor up into multiple pieces, dependent on the text I can get my hands on, preferring as close to the original copies as humanly possible. As a final note here, all of the published works that will be shown today were published prior to 1978. And these text examinations will be used for criticism, comment, teaching, scholarship, and research purposes under the fair use exemption. No publisher of these texts has endorsed this video, although I suspect some viewers today might be interested in purchasing a reprint of these texts. William S. Sadler was a physician, psychiatrist, and prolific author whose career spanned the early to mid 20th century, bridging psychiatry with the occult and spirituality. His writings reflect both the scientific optimism of psychiatry's formative years and the cultural anxieties of a society grappling with the subconscious processes, personality disorders, and then the emerging field of psychotherapy. It should be known that most of the controversy surrounding several of the Sadler's texts include books that will not be explored today that focus on eugenics, of which such texts, their early editions, are extremely hard to come by. But out of the 4 texts we'll be reviewing today, 2 of them are his most notable works: The Mind at Mischief and Modern Psychiatry, standing as complementary texts. The first, a popular exploration of subconscious trickery and the dangers of self-deception. The second, a more formal attempt to codify psychiatry as a discipline, with a particular emphasis on personality and what Sadler termed personology. The Mind at Mischief, published in 1929, is subtitled Tricks and Deceptions of the Subconscious and How to Cope with Them. It is written in a style accessible to the educated layperson, but it also carries the authority of Sadler's medical background. The book's central thesis is that the subconscious mind is not merely a passive repository of forgotten memories or suppressed desires, but an active agent capable of mischief, deception, and even sabotage. For those of you that are looking to put a timeline with all of this, it is suspected that the channeled messages began surfacing from the sleeping subject starting in 1911. With most of the sleeping subject's material being made ready by 1934, and the last part of the book simply materializing in 1935. Ironically, I recently responded to a channel commenter discussing the potential physiological effects of placebos and nocebos associated with psychosomatic conditions that goes well beyond the scope of this video and, of course, my psychological and not psychiatric background. But Dr. William Sadler had such a psychiatric background, portraying the subconscious as a trickster, prone to producing illusions, false beliefs, and psychosomatic symptoms. In the current 21st century, modern criminal justice helps support these theories, associated with eyewitness testimonies that can sometimes be discredited due to witness bias and attention blindness and confabulated circumstances. Dr. Sadler warns against the dangers of spiritualism, fraudulent mediums, and self-delusion, situating his critique within the broader cultural fascination with psychic phenomenon in the early 20th century. A reality we see in psychology associated with both psychotic and dissociative disorders of the mind in the 21st century. In fact, one of the more questionable aspects of the mind at mischief is its appendix, where Dr. Sadler acknowledges that there are exceptions to his general condemnation of psychic phenomenon. He refers obliquely to a sleeping subject, whose case he considered unique, a reference that many scholars believe connects directly to the mysterious origins of the Urantia Book, a spiritual text Sadler was intimately involved in, bringing into publication by 1929. This connection has fueled speculation that Sadler's psychiatric work was entangled with his role in editing purported revelations, raising questions about the boundary between science and mysticism in his career. The book itself is structured around the idea that subconscious processes can generate deceptive experiences. Sadler describes cases where individuals believe they are receiving messages from spirits or higher powers, but in reality are experiencing subconscious projections. As a therapist, one of the explanations I try to give clients every once in a while is to have them imagine a day when they were especially tired or overwhelmed in the distant past. And then I typically ask them if they tended to see any potential figures in their peripheral vision, or faces in trees or clouds. Some people may view an entity in the corner of their eye as being a spiritual entanglement, while a scientist might view such an occurrence as a not-so-rare visual hallucination. One thing that is certain in psychology is that the brain is constantly looking for patterns to cling on to. Sadler emphasizes the importance of distinguishing genuine psychological phenomenon from fraud or self-deception. His tone is both cautionary and moralizing, reflecting the medical establishment's skepticism towards spiritualist movements. Yet paradoxically, his appendix suggests that he himself encountered phenomenon that he could not dismiss, which complicates his otherwise rationalist stance. This tension between skepticism and fascination is one of the most intriguing aspects of the mind at mischief. It reveals Sadler as a figure caught between the scientific rigor of psychiatry and the cultural allure of mystical experiences. Moving forward to his work, Modern Psychiatry, published in the mid-1940s, we find Sadler attempting to provide a comprehensive overview of psychiatry as a discipline. By this time, the Urantia Book manuscript was majorly completed. The book was published several years after William's wife's death in 1939, that Dr. Sadler dedicated this text to. This book is more formal and systematic than The Mind at Mischief. It begins with a long section on personality problems, reflecting Sadler's interest in personology, his term for the study of personality as a central concern of psychiatry. Unlike traditional psychiatric textbooks of that time, which focused heavily on descriptive accounts of psychosis and neurosis, Sadler's work devotes significant attention to subclinical psychiatry, the gray area of personality disorders, maladjustments, and everyday psychological struggles. The emphasis makes modern psychiatry distinctive, as it bridges the gap between clinical psychiatry and the broader concerns of mental hygiene and psychotherapy. The structure of modern psychiatry moves from personality problems to psychoneurosis, psychosis, and finally therapeutics. Sadler's approach is holistic, integrating medical, psychological, and social perspectives. He is particularly interested in how personality traits and maladjustments contribute to psychiatric conditions. His writing is dense, but closely tied to everyday living, which reviewers noted made the book accessible despite its technical scope. However, some critics also observed that Sadler's sweeping statements about personality and society could be loose or overly generalized. This reflects the transitional state of psychiatry in the 1940s, when the field was still consolidating its scientific foundations and grappling with the influence of psychoanalysis, behavioralism, and emerging biological psychiatry, just shy of the Rogerian therapy movement. One of the more disturbing aspects of Sadler's oeuvre, including modern psychiatry, is his earlier involvement in the works that expressed racial views, such as Race Decadence from 1923. While modern psychiatry itself is not overtly racist, the shadow of Sadler's earlier writings raises questions about his views on heredity, degeneration, and personality that may have influenced his psychiatric theories. The emphasis on degeneracy and maladjustment in his work reflects broader anxieties of that time about social decline, moral weakness, and the stability of civilization. In this sense, Sadler's psychiatry was not merely medical, but also cultural, serving as a lens through which societal fears were refracted. Taken together, The Mind at Mischief and modern psychiatry illustrates Sadler's dual role as both popularizer and systemizer of psychiatric thought. The former book warns lay readers as to the dangers of subconscious trickery and fraudulent psychic phenomenon, while the latter seeks to establish psychiatry as a comprehensive discipline centered on personality. Both works reveal Sadler's fascination with the hidden forces of the mind, whether subconscious impulses or personality structures. Both also reveal the cultural tensions of their time, the allure of spiritualism, the fear of degeneracy, and the struggle to define psychiatry as a legitimate science. In terms of unsettling facts to some, The Mind at Mischief is unsettling in its acknowledgement of exceptions to the rule of fraudulent psychic phenomenon, hinting at Sadler's involvement in the mysterious sleeping subject and the origins of the Urantia Book. This blurs the line between science and mysticism in ways that can challenge the credibility of Sadler's psychiatric authority. Modern psychiatry, meanwhile, is provoking in its reflection of mid-20th century anxieties about personality, maladjustment, and social decline. While not overtly extremist, its emphasis on personology and degeneracy echoes broader cultural fears that psychiatry was being used to police normality and to enforce conformity. Ultimately, Sadler's works are valuable not only for their content, but also for what they reveal about the history of psychiatry and its entanglement with cultural currents. The Mind at Mischief captures the skepticism and fascination with subconscious trickery in the 1920s, while modern psychiatry reflects the ambition of psychiatry in the 1940s to become a comprehensive science of personality. Both works are products of their time, and both carry revolutionary undertones that remind us of the complex interplay between science, culture, and belief. Now, two more works of Dr. Sadler's that we'll be examining today include The Cause and Cure of Colds and The Mastery of Worry and Nervousness, that illustrate both William Sadler's medical grounding and his tendency to present sweeping claims that today can seem outdated to some, quirky to a select few, or culturally revealing to others. As a fun fact, William S. Sadler actually studied psychiatry under Sigmund Freud in Vienna in 1910. His wife Lena also attended the course with him. It should be noted that Sadler supported psychoanalysis and infant experiences that shaped adult minds, just like Freud. However, William did not accept many other of Freud's ideas. As a quick side note, I've often attributed Freud's hypersexuality due to his cocaine addiction, which of course is an aphrodisiac in the addiction's early stages that likely influenced his psychological theories. The Cause and Cure of Colds, published in 1910, was Sadler's attempt to provide a comprehensive guide to what was then understood about the common cold. For those looking for a point of reference as to Dr. Sadler's mindset before the creation of the Urantia Book, this is perhaps one of the best references to exhibit Dr. Sadler's shift in his then unaltered mindset. At the time, germ theory was well established, but the exact viral nature of colds was not yet fully understood. Sadler's book reflects this transitional moment in medical history. He describes colds as resulting from a combination of microbial infection and predisposing causes, such as overeating, fatigue, exposure to drafts, alcohol use, and poor hygiene. His recommendations included nasal douches, cabinet baths, dietary regulation, and hygienic practices. He also emphasizes the role of lifestyle and susceptibility to colds, arguing that indulgence, lack of sleep, and poor diet weaken the body's defenses. Etiologies that are now tied in the 21st century to blood sugar levels, immune system dysregulation associated with insomnia, and malnutrition. The book includes anatomical illustrations and detailed instructions for home treatments, reflecting the era's emphasis on self-care and physiologic therapeutics. What is striking and somewhat disturbing in retrospect is the book's title promise of a cure. As modern medicine knows, there is no cure for the common cold, only symptomatic relief. Sadler's confident assertion of a cure reflects both the optimism and the overreach of early 20th century medical popularizers. His advice on nasal douches and cabinet baths, while rooted in hygienic medicine, now seems quaint or even potentially harmful if misapplied, despite alternatively, people expressing relief from various saline sinus rinses. The book also reveals the cultural anxieties of its time. Colds were not merely seen as minor inconveniences, but as potential gateways to serious illnesses. And personal habits were moralized as causes of disease. In this sense, Sadler's medical writing carried a moral undertone, suggesting that indulgence or weakness of character predisposed one to illness. By contrast, The Mastery of Worry and Nervousness, first published in 1938 and later revised in 1946, reflects Sadler's psychiatric and psychological interests after the Urantia Book was majorly completed. The book itself was a self-help manual aimed at helping readers overcome worry, anxiety, and nervousness through practical techniques and mindset shifts. Sadler argues that worry and nervousness are common human experiences, but can be mastered with the right tools. He divides the book into chapters focusing on different aspects of worry, nervousness, and self-mastery. Techniques include cognitive reframing, relaxation exercises, and cultivating a positive outlook. He emphasizes the importance of mental hygiene, self-discipline, and rational thinking in overcoming anxiety. The book reflects the broader cultural movement of the 1930s and 1940s towards self-help and mental hygiene. It was a time when psychiatry was expanding beyond the clinic into everyday life, and popular books sought to bring psychological insights to the general public. Sadler's work fits into this trend, offering readers a sense of empowerment over their mental states. However, some of his advice can be seen as oversimplistic or moralizing by today's standards. He often frames worry and nervousness as failures of self-control or discipline, rather than as complex psychological conditions. In defense of this rationale, we know that having a strong internal locus of control or volitional awareness does have insulating factors to many forms of psychopathology, with respect to the positive psychology movement decades later. However, the text reflects the era's tendency to moralize mental health, placing responsibility squarely on the individual. An interesting and somewhat disturbing fact about The Mastery of Worry and Nervousness is its connection to Sadler's broader career. Sadler was not only a psychiatrist, but also deeply involved in the production of the Urantia Papers, a massive spiritual text purportedly revealed through a sleeping subject. His dual role as scientist and spiritualist raises questions about the consistency of his worldview. In his psychiatric writings, he emphasizes rationality and self-mastery, while in his spiritual work, he entertains revelations from mysterious sources that provide spiritual guidance. This tension suggests that his advice on worry and nervousness may have been informed not only by medical science, but also by his broader spiritual beliefs, or even content that was not included in the final publication of the Urantia Book. Taken together, the cause and cure of colds and the mastery of worry and nervousness illustrate Sadler's trajectory from medical popularizer to psychiatric self-help author. The former reflects early 20th century hygienic medicine, with its emphasis on lifestyle, moral discipline, and home remedies. The latter reflects mid-20th century psychiatry's expansion into everyday life, with its emphasis on mental hygiene, self-mastery, and rational control of emotions. Both works reveal Sadler's tendency to present sweeping claims, whether a cure for colds or the mastery of worry, that oversimplify complex realities. Both also reveal the cultural anxieties of their time: fear of illness and degeneration in the early 20th century, and fear of anxiety and maladjustment in the mid-20th century. In terms of remarkable aspects, the cause and cure of colds is unsettling in its disillusioned promise of a cure and its moralization of illness. It reflects a medical cure that often blamed individuals for their susceptibility to disease. The master of worry and nervousness is seen by some as uneasy in its tendency to moralize mental health, framing anxiety as a failure of discipline rather than a complex condition. Both works remind us of the historical entanglement of medicine, morality, and culture, and of the dangers of the oversimplification in popular health writing. When it comes to a brief quote from the Urantia Book to tie all this in, it indicates in 104.3 that, but the great problem of religious living consists in the task of unifying the soul powers of the personality by the dominance of love, health, mental efficiency, and happiness arise from the unification of physical systems, mind systems, and spirit systems. Of health and sanity, man understands much, but of happiness, he has truly realized very little. The highest happiness is indissolubly linked with spiritual progress. Spiritual growth yields lasting joy, peace, which passes all understanding. Perhaps after this quote, you can tie in some of Sadler's earlier works when it comes to health and, of course, spirituality. However, many of Sadler's works, post-1910, raise many questions as to what subconscious or even conscious material was placed into the text through Dr. Sadler's exposure to the Urantia papers. Thank you again for watching today's video, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next one.